Born on April 29, 1901, in the Oyama Palace of Tokyo, Hirohito was the first son of Crown Prince Yoshihito and Empress Time and was raised in a highly formal, isolated environment befitting a prince of the Meiji dynasty's lineage, deeply immersed in Shinto traditions, Confucian values, and imperial mystique. As a child, he was separated from his parents and raised by court officials and tutors, a common practice for imperial heirs, and his education emphasized both ancient Japanese culture and modern science, as Japan was then rapidly modernizing under the Meiji and Taisho eras. From an early age, Hirohito showed a quiet, reserved demeanor and an interest in marine biology, which he later pursued throughout his life. At the age of 11, he was formally declared heir to the throne, and his education was intensified under the strict tutelage of academics and military officers who instilled in him a strong sense of national duty and reverence for the emperor's divine ancestry. In 1921, Hirohito became the first Japanese crown prince to travel abroad, embarking on a 6-month tour of Europe, including visits to Britain, France, and Italy, an experience that broadened his worldview and left a deep impression on him, particularly Britain's constitutional monarchy. Upon returning, he was appointed Prince Regent in 1921 due to his father's declining mental health, and he began assuming imperial responsibilities. He formally became the 124th Emperor of Japan on December 25, 1926, upon his father's death, marking the beginning of the Showa era, meaning enlightened peace, though the reign would be anything but peaceful. Early in his reign, Japan was grappling with economic depression, rising militarism, and political assassinations. Democratic institutions weakened while the army grew increasingly powerful and independent. Although Hirohito technically held supreme command of the military and government under the Meiji constitution, in practice he often deferred to his generals and admirals, cultivating an image of impartiality while wielding significant behind-the-scenes influence. Japan's invasion of Manchuria in 1931 marked a critical turning point. Hirohito sanctioned the military's actions, and the resulting establishment of the puppet state of Manchu Kuo triggered international condemnation and Japan's withdrawal from the League of Nations in 1933. During the 1930s, ultranationalist ideology flourished, and Japan's aggressive expansionism intensified, culminating in the full-scale invasion of China in 1937 and the horrors of the Nanjing Massacre, during which Hirohito received reports but did not intervene, an issue that would shadow his legacy. As Japan grew closer to Nazi Germany and Fascist Italy, signing the Tripartite Pact in 1940, Hirohito remained deeply involved in military briefings and decisions, yet avoided direct accountability. The bombing of Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941, brought Japan into direct conflict with the United States and its allies, a move Hirohito approved after intense deliberation with his war cabinet, despite misgivings about the empire's capacity to withstand prolonged war. Over the next few years, Hirohito maintained his ceremonial duties but was kept informed about battlefield developments, and while some historians argue he was misled by military leaders, others assert that he was fully complicit, giving his blessing to key decisions such as the use of chemical weapons in China and brutal counterinsurgency campaigns in Southeast Asia. As the tide of war turned against Japan by 1943, Hirohito's anxiety grew, and he began seeking indirect channels for peace, though he resisted calls to surrender unless the imperial institution could be preserved. The atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki in August 1945, coupled with the Soviet Union's invasion of Manchuria, forced Hirohito to take the unprecedented step of directly addressing the nation. On August 15, 1945, he delivered the Gyokuon Hoso, or Jewel Voice broadcast, speaking in archaic formal language to announce Japan's surrender, the first time most Japanese had ever heard the emperor's voice. This moment marked not only the end of World War II but also the end of Hirohito's image as a divine being. Under Allied occupation led by General Douglas MacArthur, Hirohito was spared prosecution for war crimes, a controversial decision influenced by political pragmatism to preserve national stability. In 1946, he renounced his divinity as part of sweeping reforms that transformed Japan into a constitutional monarchy, and the 1947 Constitution, largely drafted by the Americans, stripped him of all political power, making him a purely symbolic figurehead. In the post-war decades, Hirohito reinvented himself as a symbol of peace and continuity, dedicating himself to ceremonial roles, international diplomacy, and scientific research, particularly marine biology, where he earned respect as an expert on hydrozoans. He made state visits to Europe and the United States, helping rehabilitate Japan's international image, though his wartime role remained a source of debate and criticism both at home and abroad. As Japan entered its period of economic miracle, Hirohito became a symbol of the new, pacifist Japan, though he remained a silent, somewhat aloof figure, never fully addressing his responsibility for wartime atrocities. He witnessed profound changes during his reign: the rise and fall of militarism, the devastation of atomic warfare, and the rebirth of Japan as a peaceful democracy, and remained on the throne until his death. In his final years, he suffered from illness but continued to fulfill imperial duties, and when he died on January 7, 1989, after more than 62 years as emperor, Japan entered a period of national mourning. His funeral was attended by dignitaries from around the world, and he was succeeded by his son, Akihito, ushering in the Heisei era. Hirohito's legacy remains complex, revered by some as a symbol of Japan's recovery, condemned by others for his wartime complicity, but his reign stands as one of the most transformative and tumultuous in modern history, embodying both the darkest and most resilient chapters of the Japanese nation.